Yo, this hot, this the spot, there it is, pod.com. We're interviewing the best comedians, so tune in quick and get your ears receiving them. We talking about life and laughter stream right to you, from the microphone right to your home, dude. Side note, this might get embarrassing, but no, don't sweat, yo, cause there it is.
Welcome to the There It Is podcast, a comedy podcast for comedians of any variety. I'm your host, Jason Farr. Let's do this, shall we? Thanks so much if you are a returning listener, and if you are a first-time listener, thanks so much. You can find old episodes on iTunes and on SoundCloud, and you can check out old information on thereitispod.com. That theme song is so funky, right? I love it. Neil Brooks did all the music for that. Shout out to Neil Brooks. Thanks for doing it. Sounds fantastic. Can you do us a favor? Well, could you leave a review on iTunes? It helps us tremendously, as does following the podcast on social media, Facebook and Twitter at ThereItIsPod. Such a great episode today. All the episodes are pretty great, and it's not because of me, it's always because of the guest. And today, it's Susan Messing. I have heard her name so many times over the years, and that's because whenever you hear an improviser speak at length about improv, they will mention Susan Messing because she's so knowledgeable and great. As a matter of fact, when I interviewed Sharna Halpern, I asked her off air who I should interview, and she said Susan Messing. Immediately, she said Susan Messing. And I told Susan Messing that when I met her at the North Carolina Comedy Arts Festival. Was so thrilled to get to see her perform. And when she got off stage, I mentioned what Sharna said, and she said, "Oh, that's sweet." And I asked her, "Well, can I get you on the podcast?" And she said, "Yeah." I couldn't believe it. I was beside myself. Well, it's a really great talk with a lot of fun stuff in there, including one of my favorite There It Is moments. You'll hear it, and we'll talk about it later. Why don't we get right to this fantastic talk with Susan Messing. We recently saw each other. I met you for the first time at the North Carolina Comedy Arts Festival.
That is correct. That was fun.
It was so fun, right? I had a great time there, and it was really a treat to get to see you and get to speak to you off stage.
Aw.
Yeah,
that makes me happy.
Well, that's good. I'm glad. Well, one of the things that I really liked was when I spoke to you, I said, "Oh gosh, that was so good, and I wish I can get to that level of being able to improvise." And you said, "Oh, we're just screwing around. It's mostly just not caring."
I think it is. I think people are worried about improvising correctly. They've heard a bunch of rules, and now they're panicked that they're not playing right. And I kind of liken that to having sex correctly. You know what I mean? Do you want to have sex right, or do you want to get off?
Yeah.
I would hasten to say that most people would say, "I'd like to get off." So for me, rules are suggestions that might get you off faster. How's that? But I've also seen people break what they perceive to be rules left and right, only to have incredible work come out as a result. So I think that alone is certainly a push of why Mick created the way that he looked at improv, Mick Napier, and something that I certainly agree with. I'm not saying that when I'm at Second City or at I.O. that I'm not supporting the integrity of the building, because I absolutely am.
Right.
Everybody has their thesis and integrity and what they want to show in the work, and I'm going to honor the building that I'm in. That said, when I'm playing, I'm going to kind of do what I want, and my friends seem to be perfectly fine with that. And so is the audience. The audience is perfectly fine with it.
Oh, the audience.
You see the show on stage?
Yeah. I got to see you perform with Rachel and with Zach Ward. So,
now when I was performing with Rachel, we had, I was still wearing my boot on my foot. And one of my favorite moments was rolling on the stage and simply hearing the thump of the boot help rolling me over. And I was like, this is so much fun right now. And I'm thinking, well, I don't think anybody cares that, that I'm what, not standing around and arguing in a kitchen scene. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I would agree with that. I think people were eating up your shows, and I was one of those people. And it was so fun, and it did have this sense of, we're going to have fun. We know what we're doing. Let's all have fun. And I think that does take a certain level of not caring, but I think some people sometimes can take the wrong lesson from not caring too, and I know that you're not, and I'm not correcting you by any means. But I've heard someone once say in regards to Will Ferrell and why he was so great was that he just doesn't care, and that not caring has to do with, and I'm more just trying to figure it out, has to do with not caring the judgment other people might give you, or not caring so much about the do it right and more about let's just have fun. Like, let's screw it. Let's just go out there.
I think you're absolutely correct. I think not caring means you're ambivalent and don't care about the integrity of the work. I absolutely do.
Right.
But that's inherent. That's inherent in me.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be on stage to shit on a stage and go deal with it. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Besides, that would be a real prop, and we don't deal with real props, real shit on stage.
Mm-hmm.
But I do understand that feeling of when your desire to create supersedes the weirdness you have to go through in order to create, then good shit comes out of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's. I think we turned it into rocket science to justify the fact that improv is such a major phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what happened.
I think that's a very interesting theory.
Well, think about it. Now improv is used to help Alzheimer's patients stay in the moment. The applications for improv are incredible. Improv is used to help people with social anxiety and people on the spectrum with autism. Improv is used, not just to write your scripts, but to help presentations be better, an architect be a better architect and better communicator, to help Fortune 100 people, learn how to agree again. So because people are trying to maybe, dare I say, justify the cost of now what it takes when you become an enterprise, because I have friends who go to business schools all over the world and, Fortune 100 companies, and they're being paid a lot of money. Then people go, there must be a basic thesis here and a process. Right. And I'm saying, no, I can still get on a stage, a blank stage with a bank of lights and do it for shits and grins.
Right.
And not care, except that if I have more fun than anyone else, I win. Right?
Yeah, I think that's such a good way to put it.
Well, I think it would also screw with, dare I say, the screws with my pay scale, because people are like, well, you're justifying getting paid this kind of money to teach us how to do that. And I'm saying, hell, I wish that we could all just simply do this.
Right.
But people are going, man, you're having fun. I'd like to access that. And I'm saying, because I don't do a lot of corporate things. I'm not as interested in that. And those are apparently the huge money makers. I don't like doing that because I know people who do it so much better than I do, and probably don't drop F-bombs in the middle of it because I have a mouth. But I do walk into lots of buildings and I see people frustrated. I call it frustrated improviser disease, SIDS. Can't be cured, only managed. But I like dealing with a frustrated improviser. I like saying, hey, let me remind you that if you're hanging out in the moment, smelling it, touching it, tasting it, feeling it right now, you don't have a lot of time to say, I hate myself, I wish I were never born. Did I leave the stove on last night? You know what I mean? You're too busy. So if you're busy, instead of saying, but I've got to balance everything, what if we reframed it and said, you have so many things to be inspired by?
Right.
Then we could just start playing again. So we really need to simply reframe this stuff and make it much easier for ourselves. And when we demystify that, people just automatically do great. They really do.
Yeah.
I don't have a better imagination than anybody else. I just throw it out there because I'm playing. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're all just different generations. So I assume that one day we'll all meet on stage, and I just want to make sure our table manners are, in alignment. That's all.
Right. So much of the stuff that I hear that's really breaking down in this sort of rocket science, as you put it, sort of way, like how to do improv, is really just why humor works, why people laugh. It's just like a nerdier way of just figuring out how it all works. But it's not this rule base. It's not chemistry where, no, this is how it has to be. It's just, no, this is just naturally how it works. And understanding that helps you get it and perform it. And that's why when I hear all these, like the real nerdy stuff that people lay out, I see it true in any kind of comedic work that I see. It's always, those points are always there. But when people start applying like, well, this school of thought thinks this, so this is the way you're supposed to do it. Well, no, that's just a way that it works naturally. And if you can get that to a degree that it's second nature, then you will perform on a level you want to perform at. But it's not about this strict rule-based structure. It's just not the same as certain things.
Well, I think I think what I deal with is people who have dealt with things on a very strict rule-based structure. And what I've discovered is they're really frustrated because they don't want to shit on the stage that they're performing at.
Right.
Look, I think people learn differently. I'm very organic in the way that I work. Rachel, when Rachel teaches, she loves charts and graphs because she's discovered that a lot of her students understand that better. I couldn't understand it better, nor could I teach that better that way. But it works for Rachel, and it works for Rachel's students perfectly. So I don't believe that anybody has the right way of doing anything. You can't play right. That kid, remember that kid you had to play with when you were little, that you had to play with, that you hated because they played right? They told you how to play. They told you what character you had to be. They told you where to fucking stand. They told you were the prince. They told you, everything. And you're like, oh, God, I can't stand playing with this kid. But our parents are both, my mom's, our moms went to Wellesley together. So now we have to fucking like each other. And so I don't do well with didactic. I do understand that when you're a computer programmer, there is a right way and a wrong way. When you're a chemical engineer, yes, you get to think outside the box sometimes, but you also have some certain things that you really better do. Improv, I guess people could say that is a part of the, part and parcel, that there are things you have to do. And I'm going, yeah, maybe it does live somewhere in my body that is a possibility. When you're too busy using your imagination, I just don't have time to decide whether it's right or not. So when you go back in your head and say, God, I hope this is right, or is this okay? I'm just like, recommit to what you were just doing. You're right, and now your job is to be more right. I'm not interested in telling people they suck. If they're on stage, they belong there. We just have to figure out how to make them have more fun than anyone else, and then they win.
Right.
And all of a sudden, the work is less.
I'm 100% with you.
Think about those people who've studied for years and years and are really frustrated, and then they're hoping they have a great show instead of recognizing they're the architect of their own joy. And I'm not saying that it's perfect for me. I just say the difference between an experienced and an inexperienced improviser is an experienced improviser has fun far more often. Far more often.
Yeah.
And if you don't have fun, I said if you don't have fun, you're the asshole, which we recognize showed up on a T-shirt in North Carolina. I was surprised by that. But that also means I got to go home and check myself at the door as well. I don't always have the best time, but what I have learned is I don't want to blame somebody else for my misfortune on stage, because I have enough experience to be able to use that to feed a scene instead of go, oh, that's shit. It's just not shit. Everything's a great choice. I just have to enjoy it even more,
Yeah, and I think that's something that you dive right into in the show that I saw with you and Zach. The first scene was the two of you on a tightly together on an airplane, and he's got to get from the aisle to the window seat, and he has to step over you, and he puts his butt out in your face, and he started the bit of my butt's in your face and against your head, and you just dove right in and just started banging your head against his butt, it was. And that was immediate, that was the very first scene of the show. It was the very first thing that happened in the scene. And it was crazy funny and the audience was just losing it. And I think it was because you both just dove right in and didn't say, oh, what am I supposed to do right now? It was, what's going to be the most fun for me to do right now?
Well, I didn't even say what's the most fun thing for me to do. It's simply cause and effect. If somebody's butts in your face, you deal with it. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to stop a scene and say, I'm Susan Messing. How dare you fuck with the integrity of me by crossing an imaginary line of what a polite verbal intercourse should be. We should be doing an argument in your apartment scene. You know what I mean? Like, if we're on a plane, I can't wait to see a million things that could possibly happen. And if something happens, I'm going to definitely chase that because it's right in front of us. I don't have to invent anything better than what's happening in front of me right now. And since I can't read your mind, I don't care about what your idea for a scene is. Now, I can always put a person in your tiresome left brain invented plot, and I do understand that I have a lot of friends who deal with plot, who love plot. I don't care. I'd rather start with the synapse and be inspired by it. I break it down that simply because the audience isn't like, what a great left brain idea for a scene, you know?
Right.
It's like they never say on form like, wow, so many bells and whistles in your form. They don't. They're like, ooh, what's that? Why is she sitting there like that right now? Why is he looking at her with a scowl? I can't wait to find out. You know what I mean?
Right.
Versus, better idea. There's nothing better than what's happening. So once you justify that, simply add specificity to exactly what's happening, then we're so happy. We're like, oh, that's why she's sitting that way. Which also means when we keep chasing the light of the laugh of funny, we're in trouble as well and we're doing disservice. I'm not saying that when I write sketch or do stand-up or punch up your sitcom script or whatever the fuck I'm doing, that I'm not writing for funny. But in improv, I get to discover what's funny. As a matter of fact, for that person, there was nothing funny about somebody like putting their ass in your face.
Right.
If you've ever dealt with that on a plane, you're, God bless, you're probably laughing. So with sympathy, it's sympathy, empathy, and educate, no matter what it is. If you're really trying it on, then the audience gets to be in the moment with you. Otherwise, the audience gets to listen to you make a funny joke, and then they get to decide whether it's funny. It's hard chasing that kind of affirmation. I'm not interested in it.
Yeah, I would agree. It is hard trying to chase that. What do you think it is that keeps people from doing what you're doing, where you're going right into it at the moment, and instead they hold back or start getting in their head about it?
Well, it's improv comedy, right? So now they feel terrified about being responsible for comedy. And I'm not saying that comedy isn't the consequence, but for me, it's not the goal. So commitment and recommitment are pulling out, of your choices. That's pulling out comedy for me instead of standing around and saying funny shit. Because when I stand around and say funny shit, now I've got to prove it. Otherwise, it's going to be a fart and run. I want to fart and go, I farted. 2 bean burritos, no cheese, extra fire sauce, Taco Bell on Clybourne. I just want specificity because that makes me believe it. So I don't have to stand around and invent a thesis and then prove it. It's the audience really isn't interested. Those moments are great moments to write sketch because then the scene can go exactly the way you want it to go.
Right. I was going to ask you about your training because you have a lot. You started at IO Theater after graduating from Northwestern. People can just read this in a bio about you. Northwestern, which had a lot of comedy greats come from it. I believe Seth Meyers went to Northwestern, if I'm correct.
Apparently he was in the first class I taught at IO. I studied at IO for a long time.
Right.
And I studied at Seth City, and we founded a theater called the Annoyance. So it took a long time before I felt confident and the people around me felt confident that I would share that. And even then it came out as an accident. I didn't say, boy, one day I'm going to teach this shit. I never. I never said that. I just didn't want to get kicked off stage.
Right.
So this was not a goal of mine. This is a consequence of me being fascinated by this shit and being grateful I didn't get kicked off stage.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, you said Seth Meyers was in your first class. And do you remember?
Yeah, he started 10 years after I did. And obviously is 10 years more successful. The first class I taught at IO was, Yeah, and the only reason I remember this is because people have reminded me of this.
Mm-hmm.
I had some really awesome people in it, like Seth and Peter Grosz, and my friends Dana and Julia were in my first class, and I had just taken some weird-ass things that I had created. Sharna had said to me, I had said to her, I would like to teach for you, because I was already teaching for the Annoyance, and Sharna said, no, you have to be a coach first. And I thought, well, wait a minute, there are people who started 5 years after me who are teaching. And I was like, well, okay. So I literally took 1.5 years off of my life as a performer, and I was coaching 3 teams simultaneously, which is anathema. It's almost impossible. And I just created these weird-ass exercises, probably high in my tub. No, definitely high in my tub. And I just experimented on these fuckers, and then I handed Sharna 3 pieces of 11 by 17 yellow legal patty shit, when in fact, because of course for everybody else, they can all use computers, but I'm going to use legal pads. That's how pompous I was. She said she bought it, so I got to teach it. So these guys were the guinea pigs of all my shit. Like the first time level 2, well, at the time it was level 3, existed. So yeah, I guess, I blocked out a lot of it, but people have told me it was a fascinating class with fascinating people. So there you go.
Oh, that's excellent. What, is there something you can remember from one of the, just random things that you came up with?
Well, I just remember that I owe, the reason I created this curriculum and felt a great need for it was people were standing around and saying clever shit. So the only way to heighten funny is to be funnier. And I was like, man, I didn't start this to watch people do nothing. It's a visual art. So that was just me pining to see more on stage, especially because the people I played with did things. So the more you stood around, they always say make discoveries, but you can't make a discovery if you're standing around. You could notice something, I guess, but doing something is very interesting.
Yeah.
So the more I could access that kind of stuff, the more it became easier for me as a performer, the more I thought maybe this will be easier for somebody else as well. Like I said, I'm trying to make it easy for people, not harder.
Right.
I could turn this into rocket science, but when you watch a kid play joyfully, you're like, oh, he's having so much fun. You don't say he's not playing right.
Right, yeah.
Ridiculous.
It's not like these meticulous choices that are made and, they're not taking all this time measuring something on the side. They're just jumping right in and having fun.
Right. Everything you do and say in the scene is a clue. Everything. So if you use, reuse, recycle, and repurpose everything, you're going to get off super hard on this stuff. If you have a grandparent or a parent who has a Depression era mentality, I use this as an example, you make chicken, right? And then you make chicken soup, right? And then you use chicken fat to make a schmear on rye toast, right? And now we're going to use now we're going to make the bones into wind chimes. That's how much I'm pushing the agenda. I'm like, you stay exactly where the fuck you are and then get off on that. And if you don't like it, do it more until you get off on that. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it is.
And each time as a result, it creates comedy. So bizarre. So bizarre. So, yes, it could be considered formulaic in a sense, but I'm like, it'll never be the same each time.
Right.
It'll never be the same. I guess somebody with an algorithm-type mind could say, well, that means you're doing this, and then this occurs, and then this occurs. But I don't think like that. I'm delighted to discover what the hell is in front of me.
Right.
I just rolled on stage and discovered I was in what's it called again? In a bunker in the war, and that's what I discovered from rolling on the stage in that cast. Now I could have said I'm going to do a war scene right now, and then Rachel starts talking to me in a church, and I'm going to be like, how do I rectify, rationalize the fact that Rachel is in a church and I'm in war? You know what I mean? I guess it could be war church, but I don't. Why make it so hard? Why not just do something and then justify that? She's not going to say, how dare you add specificity to our physical choices. Or nor would I say, how dare you, Rachel, add specificity to my choices. What I really say is, oh my God, you're so inspired by my shit. I'm so happy.
Right.
And I'm so inspired by your shit. Like, I just don't judge it.
Right.
And when I start judging it, means I'm simply not doing it enough. Because if I was really doing it more, I don't have time to judge it.
Yeah.
So when you sort of commit to something, like kind of put your toe in, that's just sort of committing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is this okay? And then I'm like, no, it's not. Because you're asking about it and worried about it.
Mm-hmm.
Although I can take your fear as an improviser and turn you into a fearful character.
Right. I think one of the things I've run into, and I've only been doing improv for 3.5 years, and I like to observe things a lot. And one of the things that I've observed in beginners and, people who are at my stage, like people who've been doing it for 3 years, it seems that one of the major hang-ups is not observing things, not noticing what they were doing. And I've tried to get better at that, and I've tried to encourage other people to just recognize everything that's going on. What is the hang-up? Is it because they're still focused so much on what am I doing and and what were the rules, or what do you think is keeping people from noticing the little nuances that are right there in front of them?
Well, it's a real shame if they don't, because the first 3 seconds of the scene, you've made choices, even if you didn't think you did.
Exactly.
And I feed on everything from that. That's where I get absolutely everything. But when you go back in your head, you think to yourself, no, I've got to make this difficult. So I'm going to come up with an idea and a thesis and a premise, and we're all going to prove it. Or I have nothing. Yeah, of course you have nothing. It's improv.
Right.
So why freak out by it? So like I said, I totally understand why people freak out.
Right.
I'm just saying there are so many options of getting off. You don't have to worry about this anymore.
Yeah. I mean, that what triggered that thought was you saying, if your scene partner is acting like a scared person because the improviser is scared, I'm rewording what you said, then you're going to make them a scared person in the scene, in the world that you have created together, because that's what people can observe, and that's something that's real for them in that moment and real for you in that moment.
Well, the people in the scene are very worried about their audience. They're
right.
Like, do they understand what we're doing? What's going on? And I'm saying, your audience is getting off on what you're doing.
Exactly.
And why you're looking that way. Mm-hmm. So maybe you just slow down and taste your food. Just slow down. It's right in front of you.
Yeah.
You don't have to invent anything better than what is happening right now.
Exactly.
Now, please understand, when I'm doing sketch, that's a whole different way to approach it.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally get that. There's so many different ways to access comedy. But when my audience isn't laughing, I've said this many times, it doesn't mean they're not fascinated, like a car accident or Christian TV. You ever watch that in the middle of the night and go, what the fuck? And you're just like, whoa. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So when they laugh, it's a explosive release of tension. It's not, laugh at my shit, asshole, and then get frustrated with the audience because they didn't laugh at your funny shit.
Right. Right. That's why stand-ups get mad at the audience. I do stand-up as well.
Well,
so many times you hear a stand-up say, like, oh, the audience sucked tonight. It was because they wrote something intending for it to get a laugh, and they got so married to that idea.
And then they got mad at the audience. Let me tell you something. The audience got off their flat ass, put down the joint, stopped swiping left and right, and got their ass in a seat.
Yeah.
Be grateful for your audience. So when somebody comes to the show, they're delighted to see the ride. Now, granted, make me laugh, asshole, is a premise of stand-up. But let's say a stand-up doesn't get a laugh. When a stand-up doesn't get a laugh, and then afterwards they look at the audience and they say, well, that didn't work. And then the audience laughs in recognition. So they do get their laugh.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Instead of alienating your audience. Now, granted, I'm not saying that you can't have a funny persona of an angry comic. Mm-hmm. That's a persona. But if you have an angry comic, you're kind of like, I didn't come here to be berated and treated like shit. Like, it played perfectly in Akron, and you assholes in Tallahassee don't get it.
Yeah, well, I've seen that one a couple of times where someone does say, like, oh, well, that worked well at such and such place. I
had that happen to me. I did, at the time, there was something called the HBO U.S. Comedy Festival in Aspen, and I did this dumb routine with a puppet named Jolly, which still exists somewhere in nature. And and it killed. It was all very inside Hollywoody stuff because, the Hollywood people got excited about, I'm going to see snow in Aspen, So they're delighted, and they thought my shit was hysterical. And then I ended up doing it for something called Premium Blend on Comedy Central, and the audience, it was like crickets. Like crickets. Because actually, the smart comedians, the people who were far better at stand-ups than I were, looked at the audience and went, oh, man, I can't do my regular shit. I'm going to do student loans and, textbook jokes, because they were all college kids. And then they did it, and they got huge laughs. And I did my, thing where it took me 2 years to write a joke for this stupid puppet, and they all just stared at me. And I wasn't going to blame the audience. I was like, I don't have enough expertise in stand-up to recognize my audience and adjust my material to support that. I don't have to do that in improv. Improv is very universal.
Yeah.
Puberty is the same in Pakistan or LaGrange, Illinois.
Yeah. That's one of the fun things about going to different regions and getting a laugh for the same sort of ideas, because it's relatable in all these different places. I think that's a great thing about art in general, is that there's so many things that we all relate to. And laughs everywhere sound the same.
Sympathy, empathy, educate. No matter what, you're interested because it's on stage.
Right.
It's not prove it, bitch. It's, ooh, this is interesting. You know what I mean? What are they doing? What's that about? It's not, I don't understand this. They're like, what is this? And they try to figure it out along with you. And frankly, the audience sometimes comes to different conclusions than I do. People will come up to me after a show and tell me something about the socio-political something of something I've mentioned, and I'm thinking, shit, I didn't go there. Bless your heart, Like, I just kind of thought, I was just thinking, I don't know what I was thinking. I was just doing something. I'm glad you came up. When you put something on stage, somebody's going to judge it, good, bad, or ugly, or have an opinion about it. And I don't have time to think about their opinions about it. I'm just too busy doing it. That's all.
Right.
I mean, granted, there are certain places that have. Rachel and I did a tough show in Boston once, and it was only because we hadn't told the people who were at Improv Boston, we hadn't told, they said to us, how do you want us to intro you? And we were like, oh, just do your intro. So they did the intro to their own show, which is completely different because they were doing short form games. And then they're like, and now Rachel and Susan, the boys. And we came out and did what we did, and they were staring at us like, wait a minute, we're supposed to get audience participation all the time, and we're supposed to do those short-form games, and I've got a team tour here and a bachelorette party, and they're staring at us like, what is this? And it took, I would say, over half the show for them to kind of shift their focus because they had been told there was something else. Now, and it wasn't Improv Boston's fault. I actually turned to Rachel afterwards and said, wow, we've got to kind of tell them how to prepare for us.
Right.
And when you set it up that way, then their mind shifts. And even if they've never seen this before, they kind of go, oh, this is what it is. Got it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's that setup that's so important. That's why what happens in the first 3 seconds of a scene are so important. And if you're not aware of what you're doing, then you're going to kind of be off from what the audience is expecting.
The first 3 seconds of the scene, the audience has made a decision as to who you are because you've made choices.
Whether you realize it or not.
Even if you didn't think, right, some of those choices are unconscious. So I'm saying, why don't you make a conscious choice and run with it? Remember, you've got yourself to be inspired by, but you've also got your world to be inspired by, and your friend to be inspired by.
Right. The thing I have, and I'm kind of restating things that we've already talked about here, but the thing that I have thought for a while and have tried to encourage in anyone I was coaching or teaching was that first moment where you're just walking out on stage, if you don't have an idea, so you don't have a conscious decision, there's still things happening. And you kind of have to be aware of that. It's kind of like what is in Mick Napier's book of do something and then check out what you did. So if you walked out a certain way, just be aware of how you walked out, because that's what everybody saw and that's what you look like. And as you said just a second ago, the audience has made a decision on who you are. They've got an understanding now. So you got to connect to that. You've got to recognize what it is that was that you just did. And if you don't, then you're doing a different scene than what everyone else is thinking is happening in a lot of cases.
Again, if you have an idea for a scene, go write it, because then you can absolutely control the outcome.
Right.
And then you don't have to say, wow, I wish you didn't, you really should have, psychically figured out what I wanted. I mean, I've had people after a show say to me, man, I can't believe you did exactly what I wanted in that scene. And I said, wow, I'm glad I did exactly what you wanted in that scene, too. But if I didn't do exactly what you wanted in that scene, it would have been fine, because it's our scene.
Right.
Not your scene, because you started it. Who does that shit? I didn't start that to play your shit. I started to play our shit.
Yeah.
To discover what our shit is.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm a purist in that way, and that's okay. I'm just saying that when I started working this way, I stopped being disappointed that people couldn't read my mind.
Yeah. I think, not trying to get into improv world politics here, but I know that there is disagreement to a certain degree with a particular school of thought that has a specific rule of if someone starts a scene, then it's kind of their scene to start, and it's you go with their idea and run with it.
Well, are you talking about UCB?
Yeah, I have heard someone from UCB say it, and I've actually heard it from a couple other theaters as well.
Look, I love UCB. Those guys can
They're
teach you
amazing.
how to write on your feet like a motherfucker. And they're really writing live sketch, in a sense. And the first weird, odd, strange thing that somebody invents is the game, and then we fuck it till it's dead. I'm fine with that. I'll play your game. You can't control me. So I'm going to put my person in your plot. Besser did Improv for Humans, a live show at the San Francisco Improv Festival. And I was like worried about it because I was like, shit, I hope I can play the game and not fuck it up. And I had never played with him or Bob Dassey together at all. And I ended up having a wonderful time. First of all, because it was a live radio show. So the expectation was there's going to be a table and mics, and how exciting that we all get to be a part of this live radio show. So the fact of doing something organically really didn't matter. Do you know what I mean? You want to come up with an idea? I'll run with it. I have no problem with that. But when I play on stage, I don't give a shit about your rules, and I don't give a shit about chess. Improv is not chess for me, because otherwise I wouldn't want to do it, because this is my joy time. So why would I make life harder for myself? I can still play your game, but I also have a game for me and a game for the way I deal with the world. So I can do the situational problems, or whatever the hell it is, your idea, I can play that and still be true to myself, but it's not the way I work. And when I do Messing with a Friend, I'm playing with a different person every single week.
Right.
And when I'm doing Molly, or The Boys, I'm playing with people I play with all the time. So, and even then I have no expectations on Rachel or Norm Holly. I'm not going to say, oh, Norm will probably respond like this, and I'm disappointed if he can't read my mind. I'm like, I can't wait to create with Norm. I can't wait to create with Rachel, and I can't wait to see what my new friend will bring to the table. And it's each building has a different focus, and I'm going to honor that. So when I'm playing with UCB, with Besser, I mean, Jesus, he's the founder of UCB. I can't wait to honor what he does. Look, I also, if I had a choice between short form and long form, I would do long form all the time, not short form. But then again, I remember doing a short form show a few years ago and going, God, there's a lot of integrity in short form. And I'm not going to poo-poo it just because it's not my favorite. It's a muscle I'm going to have to work. I'm going to Portugal in April, and some guy just asked me to do his show. It's called Improv Lightbox, and you're affected by lights on stage, I guess. And I'm thinking, well, I've never done that before. And I'm thinking, oh, man, I'm 53 years old. I could just say, fuck this shit, I'm out of here. I don't want to do that. But I'm kind of like, there's a part of me that's freaked by it, so that means I have to do it. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? I have fun. You know what I mean?
Right.
And what's the worst thing that's going to happen if you fuck up an improv? If you repeat that mistake, that's one of your greatest comic gifts. So I kind of have to say, well, walk your talk, bitch. Each day I am forced to, like, rub my face in my own theorems. And then I've said to people, I said it to last night to a first class at the Annoyance. I said, when I walk my talk, I have more fun than anybody else. But when I don't, I suck as much as if I'd started 30 minutes ago instead of 30 years ago. I mean, we're fucking human here. That's why I don't want to make it rocket science and foolproof.
Right.
My mistake has been joyful. I come off stage and go, you guys, there was a lean cuisine in every scene. What the fuck? Like, that's my joy 30 years later, which is kind of sad, but kind of awesome that I still can remember how light and amazing you can feel after a show, as opposed to, it's another class, just another rehearsal, just another show. Man, I hope I do a scene with that good person. Everybody is great. Everybody can be absolutely great. So if I poo-poo and roll my eyes at something that I don't normally do, then I've denied myself the possibility of learning. Like I said, I got to throw my, people are like, you're such a teacher. And I'm like, fuck, man, I got to roll my face in that shit.
Yeah.
Turn it into manure.
Or Zach Ward's butt.
And Rachel said to me after the show, she went, man, Zach was fucking with you. And I thought to myself, I didn't notice that he was fucking with me, but I guarantee you that somebody else who was less experienced might have been like, he was fucking with me. I just enjoyed every minit of it.
I thought it was great. It had been like you all had been performing together for years.
Why not make the assumption? Remember, in life, you don't assume trust. You earn trust. In improv, we assume trust. So I'm going to go to Portugal and play with a bunch of people I've never fucking met and go, I'm just going to assume it's good. And as a matter of fact, my friend Maria Peters from London is going to be there, so she's going to do my show. She's never done my show before. My assumption is I can't wait to fucking play with Maria. Can't wait.
That's really great. That's a new great thought that in improv we assume trust.
Well, here's the thing: you can blame Humpy Boy and Creepy Girl for all your scenes gone wrong, right? And finally, they're kicked off your team. And the common denominator is you guys who kicked them off the team.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen is the next time you're going to be the scapegoat. Or you've narrowed your worlds because you've I can't play with anybody but this person. I'm not saying that I don't have favorites. I sure do. Some people are like playing with butter. When butter has been left on the counter and it's so easy on toast and you're like, man, why do I deal with refrigerated butter all the time? I could fucking deal with how easy it is. I didn't rip my toast or anything. This is really fucking great. And you have these dumbass, stupid epiphanies. But we can make our lives easier from the top. Instead of tensing up for a show, maybe relax your crack. Enjoy the ride.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's fair to have favorites. That's just life. There's certain people that you click with and you meet and they're a kindred spirit, and certain people that you don't. And that's just life, and that's normal, and that's fine.
Somebody reposted a podcast I did a few years back, and I've done so many, I have no idea even what I've done. So I was kind of like, ooh, I should listen to this again, because somebody reissued something from a while back for International Women's Day. I think it was The Backline with Adam Crowley and those guys in Toronto. And I listened to it, and I couldn't believe how angry I seemed. I was like, man, I was in a bad mood that day. I might want to reconsider, because I was just frustrated. Like, what the fuck are you doing, fuckers? Like, why are we making so fucking hard on ourselves? And I just listened to it, and I was like, dear God, you were really passionate about that a few years back. You got to chill when you talk to people on radio. This shit lasts forever, because my daughter's going to listen to this when I'm dead and go, Mom, stop it. Relax. Just make them up,
Right. So
it's not rocket science. It's not healthcare.
Yeah. Why are we getting so angry sometimes? It's good. It's great to be passionate about it. Sometimes it turns negative and gets us passionately angry.
Yeah, let's enjoy it. Let's ruin make-em-ups now. Let's really ruin it by ripping it to shreds and then reconstituting it. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Where's the fun?
That's why even now it makes me sad more than angry that people really need sometimes to turn this into rocket science.
Yeah.
But I do understand that some people learn better with rocket science. So I can't even judge that. I'm just saying it simply doesn't work for me.
Yeah, and
But
that's
I can
totally
play with
fine.
it.
Yeah, I think that's ultimately why there are different theaters and different improv theaters and schools of thought, is that some people think that way. I don't like it when people say, like, no, this is the way. Yeah, for you, but somebody else thinks differently.
Absolutely. Look, in Chicago, there's a million different schools of thought, and I bounce through all of them because I do think that certainly a thesis of all the buildings is we want you to have fun. So they're like,
Right.
oh, shit, messing will do that, or messing will break down your bullshit. That's fine. I know the Annoyance started, in a sense, because Mick, certainly, when I was taught by him, he has a really interesting, twisted, perverse sensibility that I think Sharna was kind of like, that isn't I.O. I.O. is intelligent comedy, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's whimsy and Dadaistic and strangeness and perverse and twisted worlds might appear ugly in some places and completely protected and hysterical in other places. So for me, it's not just like, I'm a creator, deal with it, fucker. I'm highly aware of what time of day we're doing this. You know? I've even said to people, like, I've had to do Messing with a Friend in a 7 p.m. slot in Kansas City. And I said, you guys, you asked for Messing with a Friend. I was freaking out. And they're like, you'll be fine. And I'm thinking, no, there might be an 11-year-old in the house. So when I played with certain people in somewhere like Kansas City, I said, we got to really make sure up top in the intro that we protect content so that people are able to laugh. And so I kind of, I initiate it slowly and tell them, I said, I'm Mark Sutton. What is Messing with a Friend described as? And he said, a joyful, uncensored, and improvised romp through hell. Because I wrote that many years ago as a thesis for this show. And so the audience starts laughing, excuse me, because they know it's an earlier time slot than I'm used to doing. And then they went on board because they knew, oh, she's playing. She might be playing creepily, but she's playing,
Right. It sets them up for what to expect.
It's like when Nana, if you have a Nana with dementia and she just all of a sudden pulls up her blouse and shows you her breasts and you're like, no. You know what I mean? Oops,
Right.
Sorry, something call. I have no idea who you are. Oh, the Nielsen ratings called us.
Oh.
How exciting. You know what? Why don't I play like I'm really young? Hold on.
Okay.
I'm going to answer this. Let's see. Maybe it'll just be a message. Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
TV ratings calling. My name's Kim.
My mommy's in the bathroom.
Okay. Is there another household member there that I can speak with?
No, my mommy's in the bathroom.
Okay, we'll call back at a later time. You have a good day.
You have a good day.
Who does it say to an adorable child, why thank you?
Well, maybe she was just confused because most people are like, kill yourself. You know what I mean? I don't know.
I had to stifle a lot of laughter for that. So.
My mom, my daughter loves when I do that on the phone because there's just like, oh, get off the phone. Like when the Police Benevolent Society calls or whatever the fuck that is, and part of you is like, no, it isn't. It's a guy named Shad, masturbating, going, oh, I'm going to take some money from somebody. Please give me your social security number. So when I'm really sweet and, I mean, that child was a little special, but I think some other kids are just super sincere and older. Let me write down your name and your number. I'll just go on for as long as it takes. But I have friends who really deal with, they used to get serious at people who, were doing scams and trying to take people's money and stuff. And now what they'll do is they'll talk on the phone. My friend John Matta does it and a bunch of other people where they'll be on the phone with them and they'll just talk about their problems for a while and then say they're going to get their checkbook, and then they go, oh, no, wait, I closed this account forward. Hold on a second. And then they keep them on the phone for 20 minutes while they, check their email and stuff like that, and then come back and go, I don't know where it is, man, but wait, hold on just a minute. And then they keep them on forever. So improv is a wonderful way to cure evil in this world.
And that example that you gave, they went from maybe that ruining their day or putting them in a really bad headspace during the day to them having the most fun.
Well, they also dealt with a sweet young child. Now, some people might say, Susan, this seems a little civil. Something's wrong with you. And I'm like, no, I don't really feel like that. There's no need for me to talk to the Nielsen family. But I could have fun.
Right. Yeah, you get to have fun, and if someone who, like your friends who get a call that would normally anger them, instead of being angry, they're having fun. Everyone has fun. You have so much improv knowledge, and you spent time at Second City, you spent a lot of time at I.O., you still perform there, and you're one of the, did you co-found, is that the right word, Annoyance Theater?
Yeah, I was a founding member of the Annoyance. I was on the Second City main stage. I still perform at Second City once a month with the boys. Mm-hmm. I still perform every week at the Annoyance, and I perform every week at I.O., yeah.
And these are three of the juggernaut schools of improv. And obviously that has given you a lot of knowledge and experience about improv and how to do it and how to teach it. How do you feel that experience has been? I mean, it seems like it was early on. I'm not sure when you started at I.O., but...
I.O. was 5 years old, and it wasn't called I.O. It was called Improv Olympic.
Improv Olympic, right.
And the Herald as a performance, as opposed to an experimental form, as a solid performance form, was 5 years old at best.
Right.
And, some of those guys are still around, like, still learning and doing great stuff. Like, I used to watch Pasquesi and Bill Russell and all these guys on Barron's Barracudas, which was like the first breakout team. And I watched Rhyme and Punishment and a bunch of other stuff. And, looking back at the work now, it seems very archaic and crunchy. But it has to start from somewhere. And I have to say, I've never been beholden to anybody's curriculum. So even though I've learned a lot from other people and other teachers, I really kind of did my own thing, and I teach it. I have a lot of trust from the people who run these theaters, and I really, really appreciate it. And frankly, from working in all the theaters, I have discovered that I need to work at all the theaters. Otherwise, I will get involved in the politics and be really annoying. So it's actually made me a better human being to spread myself everywhere. When I was just doing one theater at a time, I went home crying every night. And then I did all three, and I stopped crying. And I went, oh, that's weird. Well, let's do that.
It was because you were able to stretch yourself in all these different ways, and you were more satisfied.
I was satisfied, but I also didn't care about bullshit. If you're only in one building, bullshit becomes super important because it's the bullshit. And I'm not going to say that it's not important. I'm saying that it becomes overwhelmingly predominant. And I'm saying that when I work everywhere, I get to honor the buildings that I'm in. Everyone owns me. Nobody owns me. Everybody owns me. And then I can thank them, love them, and leave. And then you get the best of me instead of the worst of me. And also gives me a little more perspective so that people do respect maybe a little more of what I'm up to. I'm not always in their ass. I'm saying, I noticed this. How can we improve this? Or I have a suggestion, on how we might make this better. But, I mean, I was a really pain-in-the-ass young improviser, and I had a lot to learn.
What do you...
Pain in the ass. Probably ask the people I started with. Probably, I would say, Sharna would say I was too nice. She even mentioned it yesterday. I saw her yesterday, and she mentioned, people, she went home crying every night, and she'll say I'm a bitch. No, she said something like, she even said, and you said I was a bitch, and I said, yeah, and you said I was a pussy. So we're all equal here. You know what I mean? And believe me, if she didn't want me in her building, if she didn't trust what I did, she wouldn't have what I did. I actually quit a couple of years ago. I quit I.O. And one reason I didn't like I didn't like what I was getting paid for. And I wanted to quit and didn't quit because I thought, who's going to handle my curriculum? Everybody else is going to have to teach Doublemint twins get fucked up the ass. It's not going to be easy. And I thought, how can I leave my curriculum? And one day I just decided, you know what? I'm an improviser. they can have my curriculum. I'll fucking make up something new tomorrow. I'm an improviser.
Right.
Because when I'm at the Annoyance, I'm making up new exercises every fucking week. I am making up something new. So I'm like, well, if I can make up something new, I'll make up something new. But this has become untenable for me. And 9 months later, she turned to the head of the training center at the time and she said, let her have whatever she wants. Now, maybe it took her 9 months. Maybe she didn't even realize time passed. But it was a very peaceful 9 months for me, and I was okay with my decision. I was very okay with it. I could walk into her building and perform, but maybe I didn't want to teach for a while there. And I'm fine with it now. And now, of course, I've been back again for a couple of years, and I have exactly what I want to be able to do what I want. So I'm very happy with that. But there are times where you'll have a pushback, for something that you want or feel that you deserve.
Right.
And mine was, I felt it was very reasonable. I don't ask for unreasonable things. So when it was reasonable and rejected, as opposed to working with me, something in me finally went, great, then I don't have to be there, instead of what maybe I would have done in the past, which is, I don't have to be there. You know what I mean?
Right. What advice would you give to the young improviser who maybe they're crying every night when they go home, or they just don't have the confidence that you seem to have now?
If they're on stage, they belong there. They belong there. They'll crack the code. When I went home crying every night, it was because there was a part of me that's like, I can't do it now, but I know one day I can do this shit. I was right. The little voice in me that says I want to do this, or I can do this, or I could be great at this, was right. I just had to keep doing it. And then it becomes easier and easier. I don't want to blame schools of thought for me not doing well. I don't want to blame people for not teaching me right. You know what I mean? I just like each teacher, I had two teachers who have taught me how to teach in a sense by me not liking the way they taught. I thought, well, that seems didactic and absolute. I guess and I remember thinking, well, one day I'm going to be a teacher and I'm not going to do that to my students. Why did I say that? Because I didn't think I was going to be a teacher. But I obviously held that thought and thought, well, if I were studying with somebody, I wouldn't want to learn that way. That doesn't please me. But sometimes you will also have a really tough teacher and everybody's like, but you got to take this person. You have to. You can't get to the next level until you take this asshole person. Then I'm going, okay, then I'm going to learn how to separate the message from the messenger. Although, frankly, I think that if you are a teacher and you've reached your point of saturation where you're super frustrated, maybe it's time to take a break. As a matter of fact, I wrote a book a few years ago that thankfully I didn't publish because I'd be raked over the coals for it, because I did not appreciate evolution as much as I probably should have, which is good, that it didn't get published. Because, like I said, people who've been raked over the coals, I would have probably been raked over the coals even more. So I evolved. But anyway, part of me just wants to go, just write it the fuck down, Susan, so you don't have to say this shit anymore in case there's something else you'd like to do with your life, which I'm sure there is. But I do love what I do, and I do love who I'm doing it with. And that's my idea of success. And until I figure out something else that I really want to do with my life, I will continue to do this. But if I reach a point where I'm like, I'm resenting my students, I don't want to be on stage or whatever the hell it is, I will have to take that break because I will have poisoned joy.
Right.
So sometimes people just have saturated themselves so much with this that maybe they just simply need to take a break. I've suggested that people take breaks. They've taken breaks and they've come back and they've been 1,000,000 times better than had they taken 3 or 4 more classes. Now that's fucking with my income structure, and I don't even care. I'd rather them get off than not.
Yeah.
I don't care. You know what I mean? I'm like, nope. And they just automatically, by hanging out in the world with real life fucking people, gotten to be better people and better performers. Strange. By osmosis. Sometimes you need to simply take a break and get a life.
I like that. I think this is a good time to transition into the end of the podcast where we create something, but I am interested in this book. You don't have to talk about what the book was because I don't want you to get raked over the coals, but if
No. It was simply, I just wrote down my shit, but there were some topics of my shit that, once again, almost like when I said that podcast where I was super angry,
Mm-hmm.
the whole book was super angry.
I see.
The book was like the book was Get Over Yourselves, but like for frustrated improviser disease. But it was just hateful.
Right.
Like, nobody wants to read a book where they just get yelled at. Like, I was the teacher who just said, suck it up, bitch. When in fact, people shouldn't have to suck it up. People still need environments that are conducive to learning.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm
Right.
like, well, it sucks. Get over it. Like, I was horrible. I was horrible on my chapter with women. I was just horrible on everything. I was just horrible because I was just over it. I was like, tell it to your drumming circle. I'm over it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I was like, there was just something, and I was like, great, that could have been published for fucking posterity. And I would have been, pardon my French, cunt city population me, and everybody would have been like, don't even go near Mess, and she's awful. So we're all learning.
Yeah.
And it really was simply because I was procrastinating, and I thought to myself, I don't want to edit this shit. And I was like, wait a minute, if I don't want to edit this shit, I probably don't want to publish this shit. You know what? This is shit. So why don't you get the essence of what this shit's about, all the nutrients, without all the smelly shit parts? So maybe one day I'll write it down.
Yeah, so that's the
Sooner than
thing.
later, so I can die.
I think the improv world needs a Susan Messing book. I think there's plenty that we can learn from you. And, we've only scratched the surface.
You want a
in
book?
this.
I mean, seriously, though. Like, that's the other thing, too. People spend all this time writing about improv and talking about improv. And I'm kind of going, I just want to do it.
I get that. I totally get that. But I just love hearing about it. I love hearing about it from people like you.
And I love that you do. You're giving me far more integrity than I deserve, so I appreciate it.
Well, we usually create something at the end. Let's make that the topic. Like, if there was a book that you would write, what it would be. Maybe we could do that.
That's fine with me.
Cool.
I mean, I have an idea for the book I was writing about, if you want to know about it, but you want to write, you want to improvise, right?
Yeah, let's just come up with something that maybe is only kind of on your mind. Something that you haven't laid out as thoroughly as a previous idea. Like, if there is something you think the improv world needs now, what do you think it is?
More doing, less talking about it.
It'd be very ironic to write a book about that.
Well, exactly, right? No, actually, my book was about frustrated improviser disease.
Okay.
But because I love the frustrated improviser, because half of your shit that you're pissed off about, we could cure right now.
Right.
You know what I mean? With done now pithy phrases, you'd be like, shut up, that makes sense. Why am I making so hard on myself? You know what I mean? That kind of shit. But
what if we wrote a guide? What if there was a guide? Because there are a lot of books out there about how to do improv. But what if we're trying to encourage people to do it more than read about it, think about it? What are some of the pitfalls that people run into in trying to do it? And not necessarily being on stage, but just going to a theater and starting over again, or starting brand new in improv, and then they get on a team, and then and they want more stage time, maybe those sort of topics. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, but remember when it's really hard to get me to a movie. It's really hard to get me to a movie. I don't know why it is. Maybe it's because we have Netflix. Maybe it's because my home is super cozy now. But I'm seriously, my home is super cozy now, and I'm like, ugh, I don't want to go to a movie. You have to get up, and then you have to drive there, and you have to park, and blah. But then if it takes forever for me to get to a movie, then when I get to a movie, I'm like, shut up. I'm at a movie. This is so cool. Oh, my God, they gave me popcorn. Shut the fuck up. This is awesome. So we actually have to be talked into joy now. I guess maybe because life is such a struggle, we have to be talked into joy now. It's so sad.
Yeah.
It's so fucking sad. But then
there has to be a TEDx talk about just getting yourself into enjoying things.
Well, I did one a few years ago, and honestly, it was really fucking rough to write it. I was, once again, remember I said I do things that I'm not that I don't want to do, that somebody thought I could do. So I'm kind of ugh. If they ask me to do it, there's a reason for it. I just don't know why yet, unless it really hits me like for some sort of moralistic reasons that I can't do it. I will absolutely do it. Like I said, I did that Lightbox show. I'm going to do that thing in Portugal. I'm like, shit, why the fuck not? I'm going to be in Portugal, what the fuck? So I was teaching at the University of Chicago, and one of my ex-students said, I'm on the committee at the University of Chicago for TED Talks. Would you do one? And I know TED Talks are like a big thing and that people learn from them and shit, but I never did because I'm from a different world. And I like, you know what I mean? When you hear what the latest craze is and you're like, good for you, like computers for me. In the past, I'm like, but my legal pad. And you're like, no, honey, you're going to have to learn how to use a computer. So I did. But even then, I'm always very late to the game. So I had to write this speech. And like, then they have to see it before you do it. Because they have to decide if it's okay and how you have to change it. And I'm like, fuck. So I actually had to do PowerPoint. And of course that ex-student did it for me because I was like, I don't know PowerPoint, And I was like, Jesus. And I was so happy to have, I was like, slides. I was in my late 40s. And I'm like, I have slides. How cool is that? Like, the stupidest shit pleased me, but then I had to fight for the one joke I had in it because they're like, that's not TED Talky. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. Yeah, you asked me because I'm Susan Messing and then told me not to be me. I fought for my right for my slide. I got my slide in, and I was so happy because in the history of TED Talks, I know there's nobody else that has a slide that says anal probed by aliens. Right?
I can't believe you had to fight for that.
I sure did have to fight for anal probe by aliens.
Oh my gosh.
I got it in. The important thing was I got the slide. But I'm like, people are like, you did a TED Talk. I'm like, I know, I got a slide in that said anal probe by aliens. And they're like, Jesus, Susan, fucking grow up. Like, this is a big problem. I just answered the phone as a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
Because if she was 8, she would have been out of school that day. You know what I mean? She had to be 4.
That's hilarious.
No, it's not. It's just wrong on so many levels.
Yeah, but I think that's what makes it funny.
You're funny.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Ooh. Well, I think joy is something that we do have to fight for almost. Is there a trick to not having to fight for it?
You know what? I have to say you do have to fight for your right to party because this world is so ludicrous right now, and it's super scary. And I broke my ankle in December, so I had a nice chunk of time to like sit on my flat ass eating sleeves of cookies that I hated and getting just simply fat and sort of depressed. So I remember I used to wake up for the 8 years that George Bush was president and think, wow, I have a low-grade flu. Now I yearn for those days, so where he was president.
No, yeah. Now it's interesting to look back and people are like, oh, wow, he wasn't so bad.
Yeah. So you're already waking up sometimes at a deficit.
Right.
Whether you're waking up because a friend of yours is saying I can't get back into the country, or you're righteously indignant about, as I hear sirens. That's ironic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's become scary-ish sort of semi-police state, and other countries are shrugging their shoulders and saying, yeah, bitch, we've had to deal with human rights abuses like left and right forever and ever.
Right.
And decades, fucking hundreds of years.
I mean, depends what we're talking about.
Or my friends who are African American say, now you recognize struggle? Fuck you. I mean, like, there's a lot going on, and it's heavy. So that's why I say you fight for your right to party. And that's why I say that if you can separate the part of you that's, like, really scared as a human being about what's happening with the human condition and then get on stage and still have fun, you've used improv for good. Because like I said, people who get off their asses and come in chairs and sit down and watch your show they need the escape, they need the joy, and they really need even the sociological study of the human condition. I think this shit is. So they're like, good, you'll do it for me so I can just have a plosive release of tension right now. There's a great deal of responsibility in that, I think. And your responsibility to figure out joy again. And joy in the little things, too.
Maybe that could be the name of the book, Figure Out Joy Again.
I do teach a class called Back on the Joyride when I go.
Oh, that would be even better. Back on the Joyride.
You like that one?
I like it.
Yeah. But I think people are like, yeah, okay, whatever, messing. We're waste paper. We'll make it an ebook.
Yes. Well, there it is. Thanks so much for being on the podcast. This was a really great talk.
Oh, well, you're very sweet. I really appreciate your time, Jason. Thank you so much for having me. I hope I didn't just shit in the breeze.
Absolutely not. She did not. She gave so much wisdom there. I just had to end the discussion with her saying such a Susan Messing line. But she absolutely did not. She gave so much wisdom. I learned a ton, and I really appreciated having her on the podcast. I hope you did as well, and I hope you learned a lot. It's great to be able to talk to somebody that you share a passion with, and especially at length like this. So I am very thankful for her time and her humor and her awesomeness. And my gosh, that phone call, that was so hilarious to me. She took that phone call as a little kid. But honestly, if a little kid on the other line says, "You have a good day," you say, "Thank you. You have a good day too." That's how you handle that situation, people. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Don't forget to leave a review on iTunes. Also, you can follow us on social media, Twitter and Facebook at There It Is Pod. You can follow me on Twitter at Jason Farr Jokes, and you can go to thereitispod.com, find out some more information about this wonderful podcast. Again, it's wonderful because of the guests. Next week is another wonderful guest. It's Jeremy McClellan from Charleston, South Carolina, a fantastic stand-up comic who's getting a lot of attention online and touring around the country. You should check that episode out. It is chock full of some good stuff. Really good talk. Until next time, be good to each other.
The music for the theme song was created by Neil Brooks. The rap was written and performed by Nick Acevedo. The logo for There It Is was created by Jeff Prater. The There It Is podcast is produced by Jason Farr.